Thank you, Mark. Now I know where all those LinkedIn views have been coming from. Tēnā koutou, thank you for inviting me here to talk to you today. And it is going to be a once-over lightly. I think there is an awful lot going on at the moment, so I've got quite a lot to cover in a short period of time. But I hope that if there's anything that really specifically interests you, that perhaps we can come back at a later date and talk to you in a bit more detail. So I'll just talk very, very quickly initially about what my role encompasses. Some of you may remember the newspaper headlines screeching earlier this year last year, that Te Papa was getting split into two. And what happened was we have two directorates within Te Papa that are described as museums. They're not physically distinct or anything, they're directorates like any other directorate. So my one is Living Cultures. And the way that I would summarise it is that it's really about creating connections between communities, our collections and stories. The work that my directorate does includes the development of exhibitions, curatorial research, education programs and public events, and I'm also responsible for our national program of partnerships and support around the country. One of Te Papa's legislative obligations is to work with other museums around New Zealand, and we take that very, very seriously. So as I said, today I'm just going to talk a little bit about all sorts of things that are going on for us right now. But I also just want to give you a little bit of a refresher on who we are and where we came from. I'm sure as Wellingtonians most of you are well aware, but just in case. So the Museum of New Zealand Te Papa Tongarewa Act was established in 1992. And the building itself opened in 1998. So we are now 16 years old. We have entered well and truly into our spotty teenage years, but I think we're a bit less problematic than your average teenager. And our purpose? Oh, things have gotten... Okay. Sorry, my slides are a bit mixed up. So our collections span the areas of art, history, Māori and Pacific cultures and the natural environment. And that's one of the things that makes Te Papa really, really unique, not only in New Zealand but around the world. There are very few institutions whose ambit is as broad as ours is, and that's because part of our history was we were a combination of the National Art Gallery and the National Museum, and it was those two things that came together to form this unique thing, Te Papa, in 1998. But what that enables us to do is tell, I think, really unique stories in a really, really broad way, which is something that we really take to heart, and we enjoy creating exhibitions that have that multidisciplinary focus. So some facts and figures about us. We've had 22 million visitors since we opened in 1998. Our visitation tends to hover around the 1.3 million mark each year. And that's really quite unusual, because what will tend to happen with a new museum is their visitation will go whoop, and then it kind of plateaus and then it drops off. And ours has stayed very, very consistent. So we're actually one of the most visited museums in Australasia. And of course our web visitation is going from strength to strength. So last year we had 1.4 million unique web visitors. So that's actually started to outstrip the physical visitation numbers. So I'm going to talk about some of the exhibitions and projects that we've got on the boil at the moment, and this is the most significant one. This is actually an umbrella. Okay, so we call it our Conflict and Identity program. It's a 4-year program. It's a multidisciplinary program of research, discussion and reflection on the dynamics of conflict and its impact on our identity in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So that includes exhibitions, events, publications, blogs, forums, community activities and collecting strategies. And there are 4 themes that sit under this wider umbrella that's guiding a lot of our activities: New Zealand at war, protest and reform, negotiation and reconciliation, and conflict and the everyday. And the really, really big one that's taking up pretty much all of my time at the moment is a major exhibition that we're opening on Anzac Day next year, We're working very closely with Weta Workshop and Sir Richard Taylor as our creative director. And the exhibition is called Gallipoli, The Scale of Our War. Now, I'm not going to tell you too much about it because we want people to come on opening day and have their socks well and truly blown off, and I can guarantee you that they will be. If you think about what Te Papa does best and what Weta Workshop does best, I think that'll give you some flavour as to what you can expect. But the exhibition is very much based on the real stories, the real words of real people. So we have used primary sources wherever we can. So it's going to be like stepping into Gallipoli. We've also very fortunate that we're working with the historian Dr. Christopher Pugsley on the exhibition as well. So not only are we having that creative and theatrical element of working with Weta, but that really robust and rigorous scholarship to back it up as well. So it's going to be absolutely spectacular, and I'm very, very proud of it. So I hope to all see you on the 25th of April next year, although I appreciate it's quite a busy day. Now, this is another project that some of you may be familiar with. Did anybody see any of the stories on TV about this? Yeah? Okay, so Berry & Co., this is a very Wellington story. Berry & Co. was established in 1897 by William Berry, Wellington Photographic Studio, and they produced commissioned portraits for the first 20 years of the 20th century. And in the 1990s, a tenant of 147 Cuba Street discovered about 3,000 glass plate negatives in a cupboard. And we now call them the Berry & Co. collection, and we've got it at Te Papa. Amongst the studio portraits in that collection are around 130 showing servicemen in uniforms. Sometimes they were posing with families and friends before they went off to war. And we didn't know. We didn't know who these men were. Some of the portraits have names on them, very many don't. And so what happened was we decided to turn it into a community project where we asked the community to help us identify these men. And the vast majority of them have now been identified. And it seems like there's someone new popping up just about every week. So it's a project that's just really captured the hearts and minds of New Zealanders. And it's also a great example of how when many people come together, we can create fantastic results. So this collection of nameless faces are now actually people with stories and memories attached to them. And so what's come out of that project? There's a small exhibition that's on at Te Papa at the moment. Of course, there was the television work and the documentary, which many of you hopefully saw, and a beautiful book as well by two of our curators, Michael Fitzgerald and Claire Renault. So it started out in such a modest and humble way, and it's just grown and grown. This is another publication that's come out recently. It was just launched in August, and it draws on 28 collections from around the country to tell the stories of New Zealanders at war, from the battlefront to the home front, through the objects that they hold most dear. And sometimes those objects are very, very modest indeed, but they carry such incredible weight. One in particular is a little soldier doll made out of a chicken wishbone, it's amazing to think that it's actually survived all of those years. So this was written by one of our curators, Kirsty Ross, but also in association with Kate Hunter, who's Associate Professor and Head of the History Program at Victoria University, Wellington. So just a few more images from the book. It's a beautifully made book. It feels really nice in your hands. It's got rounded edges, which is quite unusual these days. This is another show that we've got on at the moment, The Road to Recovery, Disabled Soldiers of World War I. It's a small show, but it's a powerful show, and it explores how New Zealand soldiers who were disabled by the First World War were supported to regain their personal and economic independence. So we've got 8 large-scale exhibition prints in there that were taken during the last years of the war, and they demonstrate some of those efforts at self-reliance. And they're also displayed with efforts of handiwork that the soldiers made while they were recovering in hospital. And if we ever thought that, next time my husband tells me that he can't sew a button on, I'm going to look at him differently, because The embroidery that these men did is just absolutely exceptional, and of course for many of them that started in the field by having to sew patches on, mend their own uniforms and so on. But it's an incredibly moving show, and I do recommend you come in and have a look at it. And then we've got a range of articles and blogs and so on at the moment as well, which of course is just going to continue and go from strength to strength over the commemorative period. And we're involved with the council project this week, lest we forget. And we also have a community website that we've set up called All That Remains, where museums throughout the country are sharing their collections relating to World War I. And if you have a small person in your life, you may have heard about this. This just opened on the 27th of September, perfectly timed to coincide with the school holidays. And the first couple of weeks were nothing short of bedlam. Bedlam in a really, really, really good way. So for children young and old, I really recommend you come in and have a look. The exhibition was developed by the Australian Museum in Sydney, and it provides a snapshot of dinosaur life and shows how T-Rex became the world's top predators. We've also got a small New Zealand section in there as well, which is telling the story of dinosaurs in New Zealand and the dinosaur hunters in New Zealand, and it's really up to date. It's got a lot of the latest research, including the latest information on those strange little feathered dinosaurs that they keep finding in China. So yeah, it's going to be running until February, so you've got lots of chances to come and have a look. And I would recommend, if you don't have little children in your lives, that you come in term time, because school holidays is pretty crazy. So, of course, being a museum and the National Art Gallery, I just want to talk to you briefly about what we do with art at the moment. And anybody who's visited recently will know that up on the 5th floor is where we've got our major showing of art, and that's just had a big refresh. It's looking absolutely lovely. So the spring season of Ngā Toi has got 8 new exhibitions, 4 refreshed galleries, including Bill Culbert's 2013 Venice Biennale works, which made 7 Sharp have an apoplectic fit. So come in and judge for yourselves. We've got a selection of works by Natalia Goncharova and a survey of recent acquisitions by Peter Robinson, much, much more. So those exhibitions change twice annually. So, you know, there's lots going on up there. There's a space for kids. It's much, much more interactive than I think Art at Te Papa has been for a really long time. Well worth a look. So here are some pictures. And there's the shocking Bill Culbert, which is actually, when you see it in the flesh, it's incredibly beautiful. This is another one that we've got coming up later this year. So this is a collaborative exhibition with Air New Zealand, 75 years, Our Nation, the World Connected. So this is going to explore Air New Zealand's 75 years of growth and innovation. It's going to tell the story of New Zealand's national airline through the experiences of its people, its staff, its customers. So that opens on the 20th of December. There's going to be a lot of interactives in it, so anyone who's interested in technology, innovation, and of course just this incredibly iconic story, I think you're going to really, really love this show. I'm going to look at the uniforms myself. Okay, so in conclusion, I guess I'd just like to say that if you haven't visited us for a while, now's a really good time. There are changes in the wind. You may be aware that we're currently looking for a new CEO, and the board is very hopeful that an announcement to that end will be able to be made this side of Christmas. And who knows what that person will bring with them. Hopefully a lot of fresh energy and really thinking about ways that Te Papa can maintain its position as not only one of the best museums, well, the best museum in my humble opinion in New Zealand, but one of the best in the world as well. So I look forward to seeing what they bring with them. And I was very pleased to hear that we have a friend of Te Papa in the audience. Do we have any more? Oh, look at that. I've probably told you a whole bunch of stuff you already know. But for those of you who are interested in getting to be a bit closer to Te Papa and finding out more about what we do, it's a really... Oh, I've disappeared. Check out Friends of Te Papa. You'll get previews to all of the big exhibitions, and just it's you're closer to the ground, if you like, with all the information coming through, and they're a really great bunch of people. So that's it in a nutshell. We are quite busy at the moment. There's an awful lot going on, but please, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take them. We haven't decided on the closing date yet, but it's going to be at least 4 years. And what we're going to do, it's on for a little while, but in order to maintain its freshness, we're going to make sure that it's got a really active program of events that carries it through for that period of time. Yep. No, that's a really good point, actually, and well picked up on that. Our exhibition is on at Te Papa, and of course there is also an exhibition that's being planned for Buckle Street as well. They are very different propositions. They will certainly complement one another, and I think if you're visiting one, you really must visit the other, but fundamentally they're going to be quite different experiences.